Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start just a couple housekeeping items and folks can continue to roll in. Again, my name's Erica. I'm on the VMUG team and and work with content here at VMUG, and we're excited to bring you this today. Sorry, my screen just changed a little bit. Okay. If this is your first VMUG event, welcome. We're so excited to have you. As I said before, my name's Erica, and working with VMUG is one of my greatest pleasures. So, the VMware User Group is an independent global customer-led organization created to maximize members' use of VMware and partner solutions through knowledge sharing, training, collaboration, and events virtually and in person, just like this one. Um, a couple little housekeeping items. We really encourage everyone to get connected to a local VMUG community near you. You can do this at my.vmug.com and you'll be able to search communities. We have some virtual ones, we have in-person ones as well, so hopefully ones in a city close to you. Please use the Q&A function today. We'll be helping to queue up all the questions for the panelists, and they'll be answering them live and in the question box throughout the webcast. And this webcast is being recorded. The recording will be distributed in a wrap-up email following the webcast. So you don't have to extra request that or anything. And if you registered for it, since you're in here today, you will be getting an email with that link. So no extra needs required. You can find all future VMUG webcasts here at this QR code or at vmug.com/ I think it's virtual-events. But you can locate that on our website if you're a little weary of QR codes. And then also VMUG is traveling to cities maybe near you. We will be in Amsterdam, Minneapolis, Toronto, Dallas, and Orlando this year. These are going to be 3-day full experience conferences. We are so excited to bring you this content. It's going to be amazing, powered by community. Use that QR code to register today, or it's vmugconnect.com. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sam, and I'm going to stop sharing and let him take it from here.
Hello. Thank you so much, Erica, for welcoming me. I'll just share my screen now, and I think we'll just kick it right off because as much as I love my own voice and stuff, it's really the content and what I'm going to be talking about, which I think is the interesting thing. So Pakaj might be joining us in just a little bit, but I'm going to kick things off from the get-go. And I'm talking about a research report that I and the platform engineering community put out towards the end of last year called The State of Platform Engineering 2025. So I'll talk a bit about kind of what platform engineering is, how we view it, how the industry is working, really its impact and its relevancy to you because it is very relevant to you. And I think if you're here, maybe you have a sense of that a little bit. So I've got a lot to say, so I'm kind of just going to jump right into it and we'll do some questions and Q&A probably throughout and as we go towards the end. So very first thing, what am I actually going to be talking about today? So first thing is what is the state of platform engineering? What is this report? Who am I? What is this community that I'm a part of? We're going to talk about platform engineering and how it's eating the world and AI, as I say. I'm going to talk a little bit about industry maturity and where we stand there. I'm going to talk about something I think will be really relevant to everyone listening, the democratization of being a platform engineer, and then onto 5 of what I think are fundamental data points. But I think the very first place to start is, well, who am I? And who is the platform engineering community? So I am the head of ecosystem at the platform engineering community, and we are really the world's largest community focused on platform engineers and platform engineering. So we've got about 270,000 people who intersect with our content every week, whether that's reading a newsletter, reading a white paper on YouTube, or on whether they're downloading one of our reports like this one, and they're basically trying to navigate this new frontier, and we collaborate with them. We of course have a big conference you might have heard of called PlatformCon, and we run the main certification in the industry and a lot of wonderful courses. Now, I manage all of our community initiatives and our content, a lot of our research. I think the simplest way to think about me is that I basically talk to 400 or so. It was about 395. I'm going to round up to 400 if you forgive me. About 400 enterprise leaders. So, director of platform engineering, director of engineering, senior vice president engineering. And I grill them on what are they doing? What are their challenges? What are they struggling with? Now, of course, for the practitioners here, I don't just talk to leaders, I talk to lots of practitioners too, and we do a lot of surveys. And I try and understand what actually is happening. What are the things that people care about? What are the things that are working? What are not working? And then we put it into research. And this report is one of our defining research on that topic. So, in terms of this report itself, the state of platform engineering, we need to kind of start with understanding what actually is platform engineering. Now, usually I'm in the community talking to platform engineers totally, but just to be a little bit sure, because I know we've got a wider audience here, this is the kind of general definition that you'll see across the community, across CNCF, and I'll just read it out and then I'll explain a little bit better about what I think it means and why I think it's relevant. So, platform engineering is the discipline of designing and building tool chains and workflows that enable self-service capabilities for software engineering organizations in the cloud-native era. Platform engineers provide an integrated product, most often referred to as an internal developer platform, covering the operational necessities of the entire lifecycle of an application. So, very unsexy description of what we're going to be talking about. But if you're not familiar with platform engineering, really the easiest way to understand it is it's the treatment of kind of operations, DevOps, SRE, like it's a product. So you're thinking about your operations in the same way that a product manager might think about an external product for an external customer. Take a SaaS product, for example. What does a SaaS product have? Does user research. It has, sometimes marketing is a bit of a dirty word, but it will have some of these marketing elements of things. It'll have documentation. It might have demo videos. It might have a cool name, but it will also have a way of getting feedback. It'll have a product manager who's talking to its customers of the product, doing research, understanding what works, what doesn't work. So platform engineering is really about taking those principles and applying them to operations and engineering. So you would treat the users of your internal platform as if they were external customers. You would build features for them based on research to them, based on feedback sessions, interviews with them, surveys. And we've found that this is an incredibly powerful way of approaching operations in a much, much, much better and more effective route than, say, some of the efforts of SRE and DevOps in the past. Now, you might have heard lots of people saying this idea of like, oh, DevOps is dead. And that's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is kind of a natural evolution of how we think about executing on something like DevOps. So when we're talking about engineering here, that's really what we're talking about. And platform engineering has a very wide scope, an absolutely massive scope. Because if we think about that definition of you're just treating your operations like a product, that's perfectly relevant whether you're talking about, you know, developer experience, building features to make developers' lives easier, sure. But also if you're thinking about observability, security, if you're thinking about data platforms, if you're thinking about, take FinOps, this is a perfect example of something that could be applied in platform engineering. So it is a widened scope when you think simply about this idea of just applying product management best practice into engineering operations. So how did we do this research? So we interviewed about and surveyed 518 professionals around the world. The roles that we kind of looked for, as anyone in this industry knows, job titles is a bit vague. You'll have platform engineers who are doing DevOps work, you'll have DevOps who are doing platform engineering work. So titles is not a great route, but we looked at roles and we talked to platform engineers, DevOps, SREs, architects, consultants, technical leaders, et cetera, et cetera. The data was collected from August to November 2025, and we published towards the end of December. And the scope was 30 questions on things like AI usage, organizational challenges, attitudes, future expectations, maturity, measurement strategies. We'll see a lot of some of the examples of the data as we go on. And the goal was really to understand the current state and future trajectory of the platform engineering discipline and really the industry at large. Now, Broadcom was a wonderful sponsor of the report. They helped us get it published. And there's a great quote here, which I think really captures what I'm going to be talking about here from Pankaj, who may join us in a moment. So platform engineering is the operating model for modern IT, standardizing the paved roads, accelerating every team, and Broadcom is excited to support the 2025 report as an exclusive sponsor. So I think let's just jump straight into the action now. this is really everywhere that we are. If you want to come and intersect with some of the stuff that we talked about, you can read our newsletters, you can watch us on YouTube, you can join our in-person events, and I hope to see you there. And I look forward to seeing some of the ways that you interact with us going forward. But let's talk about platform engineering and how it's eating the world and AI. In 2022, platform engineering was really focused on a few key domains. If any of you are active, actively engaged in platform engineering as a topic, you're familiar with the topic. It was overwhelmingly about DevX. It was very much so, lots of things like developer portals, Backstage was a big topic, thinking about, how can we build golden paths to make developers' lives easier, improve their experience, DevOps burnout, cognitive load. That was really 85% of the topic. Towards the end of 2022 through 2023, we started talking about infrastructure platform engineering. Thought, oh, this makes sense, applying these principles for the infrastructure persona. But really, the only kind of platform users, those customers of the platform engineering team, were application developers. That was 99% of the conversation. And that has changed quite a bit over the last few years. Because when you look at the potential domain of platform engineering now, it's basically everybody in IT. And I touched on that a little bit at the beginning in my definition of platform engineering. If you're thinking about platform engineering simply through that kind of most simplified definition, it's the application of product management principles to your operations. That is something where you can understand almost immediately where you could think about this through the lens of security, when you could think about this through the lens of observability, when you can think about it through data, especially with some of the AI stuff that's happening now. So we started to see very quickly the incredible return on investment and benefits that were coming via the approach on DevX. And you start to think, well, why aren't we thinking about security in this way? If we think about a really classic kind of platform engineering approach, okay, we're focused on the DevX angle. You go and interview your developers, you do some surveys, and you start to find out, wow, they're getting drowned in ticket ops. They are basically all they do each day is ticket comes in, the ticket is kind of vague, there's poor information in there, they're not sure what to do with it. They then have to kind of message the person on Teams going back and forth, super high cognitive load. Each kind of junior person then has to ping a senior person to help them out. That's a clear kind of DevOps, DevX challenge. Platform engineers might build the integrated system that makes it way simpler, way more abstracted, and resolve some of those challenges. That exact way of thinking about a problem, do user research, interview the person involved, your customer, the developer, find what the problem is, think about a way to kind of abstract and support that problem. And that approach, which we've seen huge success with, works exactly whether you're doing it for DevX versus whether you're doing it for security. And that's why over the last 2 years, platform engineering has started to grow and grow and grow and grow as a topic to where almost everybody kind of in IT leadership is starting to think about it. Now, what that means as well is that the types of customers that your platform engineer might be working for has also expanded. So, like when I talked about how in 2022, the potential customer of a platform engineer was basically just an application developer. Now, even in just in the AI and kind of data space, the number of people, the number of personas that the platform engineer might serve has massively exploded. We're talking about data scientists, data engineers, business analysts, MLOps engineers, even just AI researchers and people in the business team. Suddenly the benefits of platform engineering become super relevant to a much wider scope of people, which means the responsibility is higher, but also the opportunity is higher. There's far more budget being thought about in terms of wider organizations. And it also means your ability to become a platform engineer and drive value in platform engineering, there's more paths leading into it. Rather than the kind of general approach of, oh, well, if you were working in DevOps or CI/CD, now you should become a platform engineer. Well, if you've been in machine learning or MLOps, you can start to think about some of the principles of platform engineering and have them really apply. The scope of who can be a platform engineer has become so much wider because it's really just about taking those product management best principles and applying them to what are this internal service or platform that you're building. Now, if I talk about the industry at large, We're going to go into some of the data here, but the gist is it's maturing, but slowly. So here you can see the CNCF platform engineering maturity model, and we've pulled it into a little table. And the purple color is the numbers from 2024, and the greenish yellowish number is 2025. Because when we did this survey, we've actually been doing it almost every year since 2022 now. And so we've got a lot of stuff we can build on, and we ask these same questions in relation to platform engineering maturity. And I think the really important detail is when we look at the highest tier. So what we're looking and asking about is investment, adoption, interfaces, operations, and measurement. And when we look at like the furthest to the right, the most kind of successful and mature column, in every single category, it's improved. Not by much, 12.2 to 13.1, 17.3 to 18.3. It's marginal improvement, but it is improvement. And that's a really important thing, particularly because the number of organizations entering the platform engineering space has increased massively. That's a challenge you can have sometimes when you look at data like this. Year over year, when you're tracking kind of open source usage of an open source project or some new kind of discipline, oftentimes maturity can go down as more teams, more organizations join the fray. And you start replacing these like frontier teams who are quite innovative, they're quite with it. So maturity at the beginning can seem artificially very high. And it's quite interesting, and I think a really good sign that even as we've massively expanded the scope of organizations that are working on platform engineering, the actual maturity is continuing to go up in some ways. Now, the really important one here, which we're going to talk a little about later on, is measurement. A huge jump in measurement from 10.4 to 18.8, which is really important. And we're going to touch on that because I've got some fun facts on that. So I won't spoil that for you too much now. But I want to talk about a little bit on the individual side of things. So when we look at the approach of what it means to be a platform engineer, and apologies if you just heard my dog bark really loudly because I have a little puppy and she likes to go ballistic. But when we're talking about democratization, it might seem like a positive spin on this very kind of depressing fact. When we look at platform engineering salaries, they have gone down in 2025 versus 2024. And when I first saw this data, I just head in my hands. I was like, oh my God, I'm the platform engineering guy. Platform engineering is over. I'm doomed. I'm going to have to change my title again. Used to be DevOps, now it's platform engineering. I'm going to change to something else already, as I'm sure many of you are familiar. But when we start to poke a bit into these numbers, we start to see actually something really interesting happening here. The numbers have not gone down just because, loads of people, there's loads of layoffs or there's, compression in the industry or people aren't interested in being a platform engineer. They've gone down because of something else. When we look at the years of experience of who is a platform engineer, there are more people becoming platform engineers. So more people have changed their title to platform engineer, more people are joining the industry. And rather than in previous years, where kind of overwhelmingly platform engineers were very senior. I mean, you look last year, 28.1% of all platform engineers in the community had 16 plus years of experience. 6 to 10 years of experience was 32%. In almost every one of these senior categories, we've had a 6% drop in very, very, very senior titles. We've also had, a terrible idea to be doing quick maths on a webinar, but we've also seen a significant drop in the 6.10 range, whereas the most junior people almost double from 0.2, and then almost a 6% jump from 3.5. So there's been this big influx of more junior people becoming platform engineers, as we've seen, just like I talked about on the maturity side. The number of organizations and enterprises that are doing platform engineering has massively increased. So there's way more people who are becoming platform engineers, which means the average years of experience has shrunk. It's not only kind of a discipline for the very first fast movers, most senior engineers who obviously get the highest titles. So this is rather this kind of potentially depressing stat here is rather a showcase actually of how much the platform engineering industry is expanding versus how much the actually salaries are going down. Now, I think more than some of these things, I want to zoom in on some other key takeaways that I think are really relevant in terms of understanding where the industry actually is. Now, of course, the report has about 60 pages worth of stuff in there. I would heavily recommend going and looking through it yourself. It was incredibly well written by a genius author. No names, not going to say who he is. Very humbly, I might add. I promise, I'm kidding. But if we zoom in on some of these five crucial takeaways here, this I think is a really interesting one to connect to a lot of the stuff we talked about before. I've now told you on two separate slides, emphasized massively how much the platform engineering industry is expanding. There's so many new people joining. There's so many more organizations doing platform engineering. So you might feel like the proliferation of platform engineering, that it is actually very mature in terms of kind of market saturation. And that may be a little bit the case. 90% of enterprises now have a platform engineering team, according to Dora. Now, what exactly that may mean, we don't know. But the reality when you get down to it is the absolute vast majority of platform teams are still in their infancy. They're still absolutely tiny. When we ask what is the budget of your platform initiative, almost 50% is still only 0.10 to 1 million. Now, this is really just focused on kind of salaries and team salaries. When you do this kind of pricing, we're obviously not including things like cloud or infrastructure spend. That doesn't make sense in terms of a budgeting like this. But when we think about the budgeting of the initiative itself, this is still very, very, very tiny. And this is not because all of these platforms are from like startups or something. It's because we actually are still in the infancy, really, of platform engineering initiatives across most organizations. Now, of course, we do see quite a few of these 100 million, 50 to 100 million. There are initiatives with tens of millions worth of budget being run through them. And we're seeing some really awesome stuff and exciting results from those. But the majority of the industry is still very immature. And I think a really important thing to pay attention to into next year is how much does this change? We want to see these sizable chunks moving down here as more and more and more of these platform engineering initiatives get bigger and bigger and bigger, as they start to prove their value, their MVPs start to really pay off. They're able to secure more budget and grow bigger and encompass more and more and more. So that's something I'll really be paying attention to. And when I give this webinar, hopefully to this community again next year, I'll make sure you guys can check in on me and make sure that I got that data for you. Now, one other data point that really stuck out to me and is very specific on the platform engineering side. When we asked about platforms and how many platforms one might have a few years ago, quite interestingly, it was because multiple platforms was often a sign of immaturity. When your organization had more than one platform, usually it's because it was fairly siloed, teams maybe weren't working together, departments didn't realize you had like multiple platform teams at different organizations, building kind of different types of things, disconnected. And so we actually used as a gauge of how immature your organization is. Today, everything's changed. Now, multiple platforms is usually a sign of a very mature organization. And we see, in fact, that almost 55.9% of organizations have more than one platform. Now, why is the change here? It's because now what's happening is specialized platforms are being built for specialized use cases. So rather than just like this idea of one big monolith platform, which you run everything through, and that's the thing that needs to serve everything. Well, now people build, just like I showed before, all those different persona types and all those different potential use cases. They build a specialized platform just for exactly that. So that I think is one of the kind of key changes that's coming now. And it is another perfect example case of how much the scope of platform engineering is growing. Does that mean you have to have two platforms? No, of course not. It doesn't mean you're an immature organization if you don't necessarily. But if you are building kind of AI infrastructure, you're dealing with AI infrastructure, it would make sense, of course, to have an AI platform specifically for that, a data platform for inference to go into the AI platform. Your app dev platform versus a platform you might have built to support a migration effort. That is really more the way that the industry is moving for now. But of course, these things can change, and I'll keep an eye on that, I promise. Now, another thing is a similar situation as this. As I talked about, the key differentiator for platform engineering is that kind of is that product mindset. Now, what we call it in platform engineering is the platform as a product mindset. And that's the defining thing of platform engineering. If you don't have a platform product mindset, you're not really doing platform engineering. In fact, I would say you're not doing platform engineering at all. And I think this is an important thing if there's someone here who has the title platform engineering, and you're thinking is like, well, you know, do we treat our platform like a product? And what that might mean is, how do you do user research? How do you decide what features to go in? And this comes up quite frequently for me. I'll go to conferences, I'll attend events, and I might talk to someone and they'll ask me for some advice, and I'll ask, oh, so you're a platform engineer? Yes. Awesome. You're doing platform as a product? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're thinking about like a product. I'm like, oh, cool. How do you decide what features you build for your platform? Oh, we just decide. What do you mean? Oh, we have a beer and we decide. This kind of beer-based feature choosing or development process is super common in platform teams. And it's like if you aren't really treating your platform like a product, then you're not really doing platform engineering. Now, 2 years ago, the most common way of kind of driving platform as a product within the organization was this idea that you needed to get all the platform engineers to fully embrace product management and they all had to become product managers themselves. The idea of getting like a dedicated product manager just for your internal platform, well, that was not really something that people thought we would need to do, especially, you're not going to get the budget for it. Who needs product managers anyway? And unsurprisingly, if you ask me, I do have a product background, spoilers, we have seen a massive rise in this role of a dedicated product manager for the internal platform. Now, we call that a platform product manager or PPM. And of course, we asked about that. And what we find is 15% of teams have a PPM, and then each engineer has a product mindset. Then 21.6%, we have a dedicated PPM. Then 38%, we have no PPMs, but each engineer has a product mindset. So that was the goal of, 2 years ago. And then 25.4, we don't have a product mindset. Now, if you remember what I said in the beginning, if you're not treating your platform like a product, you're not really doing platform engineering. Now, if 25.4% of those surveyed, which is a pretty effective sample of the industry, there's a large, large, large number of platform engineers and platform teams currently who aren't really actually doing platform engineering. And you need to be very careful. Platform engineering, of course, comes with this promise of a new fantastic operating model to approach the way we deliver IT. But if you're not going to actually really do it in the way that it's supposed to be done, then there's no point. You're actually just doing operations. You're not really doing platform engineering. You haven't actually changed anything. This is a really key thing to think about. And if you do work on a platform team now, I would heavily recommend making sure that you have a platform product manager and starting to look into this side of things. And kind of a fun fact for you to close off with, just how much things change in this space. Last year, we asked about PPMs, and we got so few responses of people who actually had one that we didn't even bother with the graph. We thought, oh, this is not relevant. PPM is not really a thing. There's no point. And that's how much this has changed in just 1 year. So I think it's really key. Now, one of the other important things to understand is that time to value point. I just talked about platform engineering comes with incredible promise of the value that it might bring. Now, if you're trying to get value, you want to understand how long does it actually take you to get there. So when we asked about time to value, one P point, around 40.9%, it took around kind of more than 1 year, or they haven't measured it yet. Now, not yet measurable could be they just started 2 weeks ago and it's not yet measurable. But possibly, as we'll see later, it might be something a little bit worse than that. But what's really exciting is around 13% were able to get value within just less than 3 months, 22% within 3 to 6 months, and 23.9% within 6 to 12 months. So there is a really, really strong contingent. About over half of the industry are able to start proving value relatively quickly, especially when we think about some of the length of time it can take to prove value in some of these things. So I think this is a really important kind of chart to take away if you're thinking about bringing platform engineering to your organization or you're trying to convince your boss of platform engineering, because I think this is really key. Now, when we look at some of the specifics within that, obviously, one of the ways you gauge value is on your metrics. Have your metrics improved? So when we ask teams, to what extent have your metrics changed? Well, 26.3% said significantly improved. 35.2% said slightly improved. Now that's great. That's awesome. That's more than half. That's exactly the type of stuff you want to see, especially if you're like me and have pitched your whole life and career on the discipline of platform engineering. Now, 13.6% said no noticeable change. 24.2% said I don't know, which is a question mark. Now, 0.5% said worsened. Now, if we go to this 24.2% said I don't know, like I touched on just on the previous slide, that could mean, well, they've only started in the last few weeks, and so maybe they don't know yet. But most of these people have not just started in the last few weeks. I think considering we did most of this survey gathering in Q4, there's very few people who are going to start a big initiative like platform engineering in Q4. Now, I want to just really zoom in on this idea of I don't know, which is 24.2%. And to do that, I'm going to pop over to the next slide and talk about what metrics do teams use to measure success. 40.8% is DORA, of course, 31% time to market, which we just looked at, 14.1% space, and then 7% is other. And then the big whopping doomsday number, 29.6%, we do not measure. And I think we can just, sit with that for a moment, because if you're thinking about platform engineering as the creation of a product that's trying to deliver an outcome, that's trying to deliver value, that has customers that use it and are hoping that it will improve their work, improve security, give better observability, support an AI initiative, you need to be measuring. How do you know if it works or if it doesn't work, if it's improving things, if you're not measuring anything? And I want to go kind of even further into some of the issues here. We see that 29.6% of teams aren't measuring, but if we go back, only 24.2% don't know to what extent their metrics have changed. And these questions were asked literally one after another. So we asked about metrics, people said, we don't know. And then we asked about what metrics again. And this, we get suddenly a 5% delta between them, which means somewhere in here, now I realize you can't see my mouse, but you can understand that I'm pointing at all the other little categories. Somewhere in no noticeable change, slightly improved, significantly improved, someone has said, given an answer when they don't actually know. Now, what does that mean? It means they're operating based on vibes. Now, not vibe coding in terms of, AI usage, but really they're operating on a vibe. They feel like, it's gotten better. Yeah, it has improved, but this is super, super, super dangerous. You really don't want to be thinking about or executing on platform engineering in this way. And we can see it kind of time and time again where people, they're not measuring, they're operating on this vibe of like, oh, it's a bit better, maybe it's a bit better. When you think about something like a SaaS product, you really can't be operating like that. You need to understand, does it have product market fit? Does it actually make my developers' life better? And if you're not measuring, you're not really measuring and really understanding their pain, their toil, their challenges, how can you be sure whether you're actually improving them or not? And so, this measurement point and this idea of being really sure about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it, I think is really the most key takeaway I think you should have whether you work in platform engineering or not, because I think many of the people here do, many of the people here don't, is that we really need to focus on exactly that in our space, especially when we start to get a lot of stuff from AI. AI really lends itself to starting to get a little bit blurry. And in order to get a lot of benefit from AI, we really need to lock in these fundamentals, really think about our measuring, really being sure, is this improving something? Is it making our code get out faster? Is it making us deliver features faster? Is it reducing downtime? Is it making my life easier? You've got to actually be sure metrically of those things rather just kind of a vibe sense. Now, what else is in the report? I hinted and I teased at the fact that there's about 60 pages in the report. I have covered loosely maybe 20 of them. So there's about 40 pages more to go through. And I would really recommend taking a look at the report, having a read through it, looking at some of the stuff in there. I think it's a great way to understand what's happening in platform engineering. But some of the other stuff that we talk about, we talk more in detail about that idea of platform engineering growing to serve all of IT rather than just, application developers and their experience. So platform engineering kind of is the enterprise operating model rather than just kind of a DevX operating model. We have lots of data on adoption, on the areas of focus of platform engineers. There's some really interesting stuff in there on remote work, on the ways of working, and then what platform engineers are actually doing and the stuff that they're doing well. I don't want you to have taken too negative a view here because I like to focus on them a bit of a, I live in Czech Republic and it's a bit cold and gray and wintry at the moment. So I take a little bit of a negative stance right now, a bit of a depressive. But there's a lot of really awesome, exciting stuff that's happening that I think you'd really enjoy taking a look at. Then, of course, the concept of shifting left to shifting down, and I'm not going to tell you what that is right now. You got to go read the report and find out. And then, of course, some key recommendations, both for platform engineering teams, for organizations, enterprises, but also for you as an individual and what you might want to do. Now, then, of course, these emerging specialized roles, and then some future-facing enterprise architectures so that you can look at that really define this more modern, very well governed, and multi-platform reality that I was talking about. And then, of course, what does great actually look like? Like, how do you do great platform engineering today? So, if you want to get into platform engineering or you want to make sure you're doing it really well, go have a read. And I think we can hop over to some Q&A and you can download the State of Platform Engineering now or follow this link or the QR code. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. And if you've got some questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Mm.
We've got one in the chat if you want to start with that. It is, what is the PPM operating systems?
So if I dissect a little bit what I think you mean, you're asking around what is the platform product management operating system? Well, really like how I talked about, it's just the idea of taking kind of a technical product manager who may have usually been focused externally and just pointing them internally. So if you're familiar with kind of this thinking about a SaaS product and what might go into promoting a SaaS product, building a SaaS product, selling a SaaS product externally. It's really the same thing, just from an internal approach. Obviously, if you want to be a PPM, there's way more kind of specifics you can go into on that. I'm actually building a course on it right now. And there's some great content on our community YouTube channel you can look into. But that's really the core information to understand there.
I think this slide might cover this next question, but it says, where did you get your data and how can I do some of this research and see these same numbers myself?
Sure. I mean, so we got our data from our basically surveying and interviewing our database. So if you weren't here at the beginning, we have about 270,000 people who, over the last 5 years, have started to intersect with our content in many ways. So we have kind of the largest platform engineering newsletter in the industry, about 107,000 readers. So we ran a survey to many of them. And then we did expert interviews with enterprise leaders, head of platform engineering, basically senior platform engineers across different geos, across different industries, and then use that to piece together this information. And if you'd like to do it yourself, to close off on that one, we have a platform engineering community Slack. I'm sure you could create your own survey, put it in there, ask the same questions. I think you'd get very similar results.
We have a question on what recommendations do you have for the people or organizational transformation companies need to go through to adopt platform engineering and platform as a product?
Sure. So, as an organization, what I would really say the most key thing is to start small. It really depends on, of course, now who you are. If you are actually leading an engineering organization yourself, if you're an individual, we've got content on both those directions. But I think the fundamental key is around really starting small and then thinking about problems and whys, and then solving those problems and answering those whys. So rather than thinking, oh, let's start building this absolutely gigantic platform that can do all of our problems. Start to interview some of your developers, start to think about, okay, what are the problems that they're facing and what could we automate? What could we build into a platform? What could we abstract that would make their lives easier and support them? And really start small. Don't start mega big. Convince your boss to give you some budget to do what we call an MVP, a minimum viable platform. Now, have that be kind of as small as representative. Pick a representative app. So, not a super niche, fancy new kind of greenfield, but also don't pick an insanely complicated brownfield. Pick a app that kind of its estate represents most of your organization. Build an MVP serving the team that manages that. Do some research, do some interviews with them, do some surveys, understand their pain, and then build the platform based off of that. That will help you prove value very quickly. It will also make it a lot easier to measure because you're starting pretty small. So there's a lot less things to measure. And if you're thinking about, well, what was our problem that we were solving? You kind of have a sense of what your metrics will be. And then you can take that to the person who gave you the budget for that and say, look, we picked this one small, simple use case. We absolutely smashed it. We got 2, 3, 4,000% ROI, are some of the insane numbers that you see in these small cases. And then you use that to expand. You say, hey, I want to replicate the exact same thing on XYZ. And then, really, within a year, you will have a pretty substantially large platform. If you go straight at it and say, hey, I want to cover my entire organization, I want to have this massive platform team, you're never going to get there. So start small like that, and that's the playbook you should go with.
We had a point of clarification on the first question about the operating systems. They said that we
Hmm.
have certain applications running on Hyper-V and some runs on VMware ESXi. Is this platform as a product?
Not necessarily. I mean, it depends on how you're thinking about them. Now, if you are thinking about the users, and I think that's the really important thing, platform as a product is about thinking about your internal platform and the internal users of that platform like they're your customers. So not inherently, just because you've got, certain applications running on Hyper-V and you've got things like that, that's not inherently platform as a product. Platform as a product is specifically kind of the discipline or the practice of treating an internal service like it's a product with product management principles. So that's how you should approach it. Now, VMware, ESCI, Hyper-V, like these can be things that you treated like an internal product. You could be interviewing the users of them in your organization and understanding this is how they use them. This is their challenges. This is how we can improve them. It could be involved in platform as a product, but they're not inherently platform as a product.
Thanks. We've got one more question. What would be the path or first resource you'd recommend for someone who wants to learn and become a platform engineer?
Well, and sorry again if you can hear my dog barking at me. I don't. These things are really good at filtering it out, but she's a bit of a menace, especially when I'm giving webinars. I will very biasly say, of course, we have a massive community of stuff you can go look at. I think the if you're not familiar with platform engineering, the very first thing I would have you do is you could go either on YouTube or on our platformengineering.org and read what is platform engineering. So I would really make sure you understand what platform engineering is, platform as a product, as a concept, and then how it is different from things like DevOps and SRE, which is concepts you're probably familiar with already. And if you have a sense of those things, and you're kind of clear on that, then you can start to go a little bit deeper. So go to university.platformengineering.org, start to look at how kind of observability and security play into platform engineering. But really making sure that you understand that fundamental premise of how platform product management and platform as a product intersect with some of the services and ops that you're doing. I would say there's a very good chance, Robert, that you could be a platform engineer kind of within the next 6 months. Most of the work that everybody here is doing falls within the realm of a platform, a platform engineer. It's just really about how you're approaching it and bringing in the product management side of things. So I would take a look at some of that stuff, and we've got loads of resources you can look at. Oh, go read the report. What was I thinking? That's the obvious answer. Go read the report, Robert. That will give you everything you need.
Last call for Q&A. Is there anything you'd like to add, Sam, that you haven't covered already? This was incredible, and thank you so much for doing this for our community.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I think we covered a good bit of ground. Now, of course, like I said, there's way more in the report than I could get to. And if you're particularly interested in AI, we also have a report on the state of AI in platform engineering, which I think is really interesting, very prescient. The AI story there is really cool. But really, for anyone who's interested in this stuff, I mean, we've got a great community with lots of stuff happening, and it's great to be collaborating with you guys. So would love to see more collaboration between all of us. So hop on over to the Slack, send me a message. I'd love to connect with you and learn from you and do more together.
Okay, great. I give everyone one more option to ask any questions, but I'll go into a little bit of my ending housekeeping. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were here. This was recorded and it will be posted on the VMUG YouTube following the webinar. If you registered for it and you're here, you will be getting that via email. Additionally, you will be getting a short survey after you close the webinar today. If you could go ahead and fill that out, that really helps us tailor more content to you and what you're looking for. And that's how things like this come about today. So give everyone one last minute or two, but give you a few give you a few minutes back in your day.
Thanks, everybody.